Wednesday night edition of the Anaheim Calling Podcast. We are back to discuss a plethora of topics, including major injury news out of Anaheim, San Diego Gulls advancing to the conference finals. We've got, of course, some refereeing controversy in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we've got a lot to get into. We're also going to get some questions, of course, from our Twitch viewers, as we always do. But for those who are listening on the recorded version, if you're a little confused right now, don't be alarmed. We have a couple things to announce here before we go any further. So basically, if you just heard an ad, that is basically confirming that it's now official. The Anaheim Calling Podcast is now part of the Greater Vox Media podcast network.
The SB Nation Podcast Network, officially.
Yes. And so we're going to be, as far as your listening and viewing experience for the Twitch streamers, or I should say viewers, it's not really going to make a ton of a difference. There will be two ads during the podcast that will be in there for the recorded version. But
sorry, let me jump in. There will be one at the front, one at the back, and one in the middle.
Yeah, but outside of that, it's going to be the same great show that you've been experiencing for almost the last 2 years now. And really what this does, this little mini transition, is it basically allows us to keep this thing going and keep bringing you the same content with the same regularity that we've been doing in previous seasons. So It's exciting time.
Yep.
Exciting times for the AC pod.
And I think on top of that, I think the kind of big news out of this is that I think we're going to be able to do a whole lot more with the show, with officially being on the SB Nation Podcast Network. There will be a lot more opportunities that come to us that will make this show bigger, better, and greater, and give us opportunities to expand and kind of bring you guys even better content and bring you kind of more interviews and different things like that for the show, and kind of really kind of take this to a whole nother level for you guys.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of great stuff, coming along within the next few months.
Bonnie said and girls. Bonnie said and girls, not just guys.
Oh, are we doing that thing? All right. So let's just jump in here. We started recording at 8:30. We had planned to start recording at 8, and that's because we had some overtime action between the Sharks and the Blues in Game 3 of the Western Conference Final. And of course, it being the Sharks, it being the 2019 Stanley Cup playoffs, it just had to end with controversy coming from the referees once again.
Yep. And you and I were talking about this a little bit before the show was going. This may be the most egregious error out of all of them, out of all of the different calls that, or however you want to put it, all the different calls that the Sharks have gotten going for them this entire playoffs, from the Pavelski, the 5-minute major on Cody Eakin, for the cross check to Joe Pavelski, to the offside review that went the Sharks' way that was extremely tight to.
Oh, but that was a correct call.
No, I agree.
Back that one up. Don't include that one in this list.
Fair.
Don't do that.
Fair. Fine. That was controversial, though. I think that's why I included it, is it was controversial.
That wasn't really controversial. That was it just kind of sucked. But it wasn't. There was nothing incorrect about it.
So, and then you move forward to tonight's game, and the Sharks scored the game winner on what was a hand pass.
Well, that's the thing. So I kind of want to differentiate, because now we're at, I think, 3 controversial endings for the Sharks. And let's start with the very first one, which was obviously the Cody Eakin major. Incorrect call. I think you just have to say that was probably not a major penalty.
Probably not.
Questionably a minor penalty. I mean, I think you could have called something there. If a guy gets hurt, that's bad. I don't think that it's necessarily unreasonable to call a penalty. Clearly something happened there. But that being said, to me, that's in its own category, because yes, the Sharks did get a 5-minute power play, but they still went out and scored 4 goals.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just that the odds of that happening are insane. And at that point, if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, you still have an opportunity to defend your lead. You still have a chance. Now, with offside review against Colorado, again, that was just one of those things where the correct call was made. The mechanism of the offside review was interpreted correctly. It's just that it's not the most enjoyable way to see a goal, shake out, basically. Now, for tonight, on this play, I got to say that this is just actually the wrong call. If you look at the play on the ice, I believe it was Timo Meier who's on his knees, gets a hand pass over to, blanking on the name, I forgot who got the assist on the play, but he gets it over to Erik Karlsson, who then buries it home. The call on the ice was goal, which was correct. But however, because the hand pass was not a part of the actual goal itself, it's not a reviewable play.
Yeah.
And so here we are. So to me, this is the only one that has actually just been wrong.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. That you could maybe make the argument with the Vegas one that you're kind of in some squishy territory. Probably it was the wrong call, but
wrong call, but it's still not literally black and white that decided the game. I mean, you could argue yes, it did, and I think that you have a totally valid argument, but this directly decided the game.
Yeah.
This non-call.
Yes, exactly. And I think that this was one that you can look at and say, this is black and white. There's no middle ground on this. This was the incorrect call. There is no there's no world that we live in where you could maybe make the argument, well, the refs just saw it wrong, or this was just they blew the call. There's no other way around it.
I mean, and to use a baseball analogy, this is like an umpire calling a guy out when he was safe. I mean, it's pretty much, it's that level of just incorrect, right? And so I think that what's shocking to me is that because it's not a reviewable play, all the I almost said the attorneys, I don't know why, all the officials can do is confer in their little area. But what's shocking to me is that how did not one of the 4 on-ice officials see the hand pass and be able to raise that opinion in this little conference they had? That to me is what's shocking. That means that they all missed it, or that the one guy who saw it got voted off the island. Well, I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, yeah, because so for those of you out there that don't fully know this or don't fully understand this or different things like that, the 2 referees, the guy with the orange armbands, they're the only ones that can make a goal and no goal call. But once the play is done, a linesman can confer with them and give them their opinions on things to make an informed decision on this. So even if the referees did not see the hand pass, but then now I'm trying to think. Now I'm actually backtracking in my head.
What?
I think no, linesmen do not call hand passes. That's on the referee also. So the linesman could still go up to the referee and say that.
But they could have still seen it.
They could have seen it and gone up to the referee after that. I was just trying to in my head think if the linesman saw the hand pass, if he blows it dead right away. But no, I don't believe he does. That's on the referee. But yeah, so this is not a reviewable play. I think probably what they're gonna do maybe, and there's not gonna be. I feel like this is probably gonna make some people mad. Because there's a contingency of fans out there that are happy with human error. This is just kind of how the breaks go, different things like that. And
this is just how it is.
Yeah, and being happy with the human error aspect of it. But I think kind of the way that this needs to go to kind of stop stuff like this from happening is essentially it's not reviewing every scoring play on that level, but it's. In a way, it's that because it's making sure every goal was scored. And I think the way that you phrase it in a good hockey goal. And I don't think you want to go back and review every single hand pass that leads up to a goal. And we get into that whole debate about offside review and how far back do you really want to go. I think maybe the way they word it, and this is, and I'm wondering if maybe, let me look into something as we're going along a little bit more. But I'm pretty sure there's some sort of wording in the rule books to specifically allow for it may have only been when the puck hit the net in terms of the net above it and it directly led to a goal against that can be reviewed and taken back. But I'm curious if it's worded in a way that it could have potentially been utilized in this scenario, or if it is specifically put in the way of.
No, I don't think that seems a little separate to me.
Fair enough.
But also, why are hand passes illegal in the offensive zone but legal in the defensive zone?
I mean, that's a good point. They should just be illegal everywhere.
I mean, why are we? We're having this huge debate because for whatever reason, once again, in the game of hockey, defense gets a lot of advantages and offense doesn't.
Yep. I mean, I guess the reason for hand passes is you don't want people swatting a puck to someone else. I don't know.
or just, like don't allow guys to swat it into the goal, kind of like how you do with skates and, kicked passes. But I mean, that was a heady play by Timo Meier. And by the way, just to fill in what I got wrong earlier, Gus Nyquist with the primary assist.
Oh.
So anyway, anything else you want to add here about this play, these playoffs? I guess I should mention that your Hurricanes.
Damn it!
Hold on, I'm gonna have to squint a little bit to see the score. Oh, is that 3-0 Boston in the series? Jake is looking distraught right now. Looks like I just broke him some bad news. I mean, how do you feel about that series? Because to me, it kind of just feels like, in a way, Carolina's gotten a little unlucky. But on the other hand, I don't know. I just feel like Boston's kind of the better team.
Yeah.
3-0. I feel like Carolina could still make it a series, push it to 3-2. But I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to win 4 games in a row. That feels a little... I feel bad because I'm torn here. I like the Hurricanes. I like their team. I like kind of everything they've done this season. But I think, and even though I detest Boston, I still think I would rather see a Boston-San Jose final than San Jose Carolina. Just for entertainment value.
Is it really, though? Would Boston really be that much more entertaining?
It's honestly just the fact that it's Boston. Carolina as a franchise just doesn't.
You're the
for
worst.
Me.
You are the
Carolina,
you hate
San
fun.
Jose is like a
you
bad
hate
regular
fun.
season matchup.
You hate fun.
I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I am rooting for the Sharks in the Western Final because I just have no interest in the Bruins Stanley Cup Final. That would probably be the most boring final ever. Every game would be 2-1.
Would it? This game just ended 5-4. This game
yeah, but that's because Martin Jones was Martin Jonesian for a period where he let in 4 goals.
The Blues are deep and have actually fun players.
I just don't enjoy. Yes, they do have fun players, but I don't enjoy the way that they use those fun players, if that makes sense. I feel like the reason that they've kind of righted the ship this season is because they play this really kind of passive. They have this really passive forecheck where they just trap basically, and then they're going to grind it out on the other side. I just feel like as much as I give Craig Berube credit for turning them around, I feel like he kind of made them a boring version of themselves. I mean, they've always been a boring team, but I feel like if you put Rod Brindamore behind the bench of the Blues, I feel like they would be really fun because they do have those horses. But with Berube, I feel like he's turned them into kind of just a trap team. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just totally off there, but
yeah,
that's how I feel.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
You are off. By the way, also,
fine.
The Blues have Pat Maroon plus there.
He had a really nice move in the third, I believe, going between his own legs.
Every single spot that no matter how much deeper, or not no matter, as long as the Blues keep going, that means we get more John Hammett hockey games. That's not a bad thing.
True. I mean, I should in a way be rooting for the Blues just because they haven't been to a cup final in like 60 years or something. And then, or maybe it's been a little shorter than that, but as far as the Sharks, I want to see Thornton get one. I don't care about any other team at this point. I want to see Thornton get. We need it. Ovechkin got his last year. Joe Thornton's got to get his this year. To me, that's just fair.
And I wouldn't.
Then I can go back to rooting for just the best team. The team that deserves it the most.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it to see Joe Thornton go on and win. Here's the question for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a good transition point to something that CJ brought up in our Slack chat today. The game winner tonight was scored by none other than Erik Karlsson.
This is actually you have to reach and maybe pull the groin doing it, but it is a bit of a transition. So Erik Karlsson is a free agent after this season, and the Ducks are probably going to have a little more cap space now with the announcement that Ryan Kesler has undergone successful hip resurfacing surgery, and now it is basically in question if he will be playing at all next season. Sounds like the expectation is that he will miss next year, reevaluate the season after. basically hip resurfacing, for those who don't know, I'm going to raise my hand there before I actually read this when the news broke, is a bone-preserving hip replacement that can provide pain relief and increase function and normal activities of daily living. The surgery does leave open the possibility that Kesler could resume his NHL career. Just career. Like, not even could he be back next year. It's just like black and white. Can he play again following a very lengthy recovery? So basically he got a hip replacement. It seems like it's a fancy hip replacement. It's
not a full hip replacement in the Eric Stevens article, I believe.
It's a bone preserving.
Yeah.
So basically they kind of shave it down.
Basically, this is an alternative to full hip replacement, pretty much. And so it doesn't.
But I feel like he's probably going to need one eventually.
He may still eventually need one, but for now, this will stop that from happening. And it's, from the sounds of it, it's something that was mainly done to provide him some form of.
I feel like this is like a bridge to whatever else is going to happen later on, because now it just seems like it was more about just getting through his day-to-day at this point.
Agreed. And then kind of reevaluating as it goes on. I mean, you look at the comments from Bob Murray on it. Let me pull it up real quickly. But it really felt like Bob Murray was kind of saying we're kind of open to doing whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I can read it off here.
Go
basically. For it. Bob Murray's saying, as we all know, Ryan has been fiercely battling his condition for quite some time. I've been extremely impressed by his determination to play despite being significantly injured. At this point, Ryan needs to think about his life and family. The pain he felt was significant, and we agree with his decision to have the surgery. While it is unlikely he will play in 2019-20, we will support any decision he makes about his future playing career. He deserves the utmost respect, which he will receive from the entire Ducks organization as he contemplates his future. And then I'll just finish off with the Kesler quote here in this short little press release. This is from Kesler. At this point in my career, this surgery was the best option for my quality of life. The pain I was suffering has been greatly reduced since the procedure, and I am grateful for that. I want to thank all the doctors, trainers of Team Kesler. While my playing future is unknown, I'm in a good place, and it goes on a little bit more. But basically, this is kind of, in a way, you could look at this two ways. One is this tells us a lot, and another way, it doesn't really tell us anything. Where I feel like there's still a distinct possibility that we will see him play again with the Ducks. It also definitely leaves the door open to him never playing again. So where do we go from here? I guess the immediate ramifications are that clearly Ryan Kesler will be placed on long-term injured reserve because he's not retiring. They're definitely not trading him. So really the only other option is to place him on LTIR. And I haven't done the math yet what the cap savings will be, but I don't think that they're going to be that high with the LTIR.
So I'm actually kind of on this right now. So give me one quick second. But so for those of you out there that don't know, with LTIR, kind of the big thing going into it is you have to become you can't put someone on LTIR first off until training camp. It's not something that you do in the off season. So I actually have up right now the cap friendly armchair GM kind of tool. And so I've kind of modified it a little bit to get it to where the Ducks have 14 forwards, because they will have the kids coming up, and kind of a lot of roster spots are already taken. They have basically 6 defensemen signed. We didn't break this down in the last podcast that we did, and I can't remember his name, and I'm going to go try to look it up and try to pronounce it and probably butcher it all in the process. But the Ducks went out and signed, and yes, I'm on our page right now. I'm going to pull it back real quick. But the Ducks went out and signed Yanni Hakempa.
Wow.
That was bad.
That couldn't have been worse.
That was really, really bad.
0 out of... It's because you gave up at the end.
Yeah.
You didn't even finish. You didn't, own it.
You want to give it a shot?
Yanni Hakanpaa.
There you go. That guy.
You got to give him some gusto. I mean... They did sign him. They did sign him out of Finland. Seems like a guy who's going to get a shot at an NHL job. 6'5" defenseman. Something about Bob Murray and his right-handed tall defenseman that he just has to have on his team. This is kind of like the Andre Schuster redo.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say about the guy. I haven't watched much of him. Actually, I've never watched him play. But he had 11 goals and 12 assists last year in Finland in 52 games. So maybe he could be a guy who contributes next season for the Ducks.
And I fully expect him to at least get a shot at the NHL roster start because it is a one-way deal. So he'll get paid the same amount no matter what if he's in the NHL or AHL. So right now I've kind of built it where the Ducks have Jacob Larson up with the team and then Josh Mahura just as a placeholder for Yanni. I'm just going with that as his name because I can't even get close pronouncing his last name. Hakanpää. So as of right now, the Ducks have a combined cap hit, and I do have Patrick Eves still there and Ryan Kesler still there. And actually, I need to, now that I think about it, pull up two more guys. So here we go with Max Jones coming up and Isaac Lundestrom, for instance. So that puts them at 16 forwards, and then Kesler and Eves will eventually go on to LTIR. But so the Ducks are at a cap hit of 78.165 with this. The salary cap is supposedly rising up to 82.5. And you are allowed to go over the salary cap by 10% in the summer. So the Ducks can essentially get to $90 million in terms of overall salary cap. So right now, the Ducks have about $12 million in cap space to work with. And this is with needing one defenseman to be signed and a backup goalie.
Yeah, so they actually have a little wiggle room.
Yep.
And they're going to get that room. They're going to get that room when the season actually starts. They don't technically have it now, but they don't have to have it.
Yeah, so they can go 10% over the cap in summer, and then once they hit training camp, Eves and Kesler will go on LTIR. So essentially, they're going to be 10% or allowed to be 10% over during the season, also because of that.
Well, so before we kind of pivot into more of the minutia of this, I mean, we should spend a little time talking about what you think this means. Because this is all speculative at this point. This is all just what we think. But what do you think will happen with Ryan Kesler's future in Anaheim at this point? Do you think we see him play again with Ducks?
No.
Really? Wow. That was immediate. That was just straight from the gut.
Yep.
Straight from the bowels.
People who listen to this show know. First pod on SB Nation's big brand pod network. Gotta be on brand. Shoot from the hip.
All right. Well, you're going to have to do a little explaining, sir.
So the reason why I think he's done is that we've seen kind of where he's at. We've seen what he's been at this past couple of years with the amount of pain, with the amount of preparation, with the amount of everything he had to go through just to get himself ready to play. And the fact that the statements were, and granted, this is reading into player statements a bit too much, and I'll fully admit that. But if you look at it, he's saying that right now his primary concern is his quality of life. And that should be his primary concern, and that he is just focused on kind of being able to play with his kids right now. And it really doesn't even sound like training and getting ready for the grind is even a part of his mind. And I really think taking a year off isn't exactly gonna make it easier to come back. I mean, this type of hip injury is not easy to come back to in the first place. You look at Ed Jovanovski. He came back and he played, 30 games? Mm-hmm. And granted, I don't know Ed Jovanovski's history as well as I know Ryan Kesler's, but I'm skeptical to think that Jovanovski had as much of a degenerative hip and issues with this hip as Kesler had prior to getting this hip resurfacing, because I think this is the exact same procedure that Jovanovski had, and that was mentioned in the Stevens article, that he went to the same surgeon, went to everything the same as him. But I think that probably the shape that Jovanovski was in prior to that was probably a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that Kesler's hip has been degenerating. And so, typically hip resurfacing is carried out on younger patients. It's for people who have less damage, but I feel like with him, he's got a lot of built up damage in that. It's interesting because if you read a little bit, just quick Google search, the recovery time for hip resurfacing, you can be back to walking. Some patients are back to, actually many patients are back walking just 4 hours after surgery. And so it seems like one of those things where you can get back to a baseline quickly, but as far as being in a contact sport, I don't necessarily know how that shakes out. But to kind of echo a little bit what you're saying here, I feel like it is far less likely that we see him play again than that we see him suit back up for the Ducks. I am leaving the door cracked open, but I just feel like this is not painting a very optimistic picture, at least for him playing in the NHL. I do think that in a way, this is obviously the best thing for him at this point in time, just for his general health. What I wonder, though, in regards to whether or not we see him playing again is, does he end up retiring at some point? If he misses next season and decides, you know what, I'm in a good place, I'm at peace with where my career is at, maybe you hang him up. Like, do you think, or does he just ride out the contract? Does he just?
I think he rides out the contract.
Ride out the next 3 years.
I think he rides out the contract.
I think that's the smart, and that's why I feel like he has to kind of leave that door open, because otherwise it's hard to justify sticking around.
Not exactly. I mean,
he doesn't. No. What I'm saying is, like, he doesn't. Look, he has earned this contract.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, if he can't just come out and say, yeah, this is a career-ending procedure, right? And then from there, medically he can't play and he's hanging around. So I feel like, because there is the hip resurfacing, maybe part of the thought process in the procedure is, hey, this will give me maybe an outside shot of playing again, and ergo I can more justify sticking around and not just retiring. I don't know. I mean, there's obviously a lot that goes into this. I do wonder, for a procedure that has this many ramifications, how much of an influence does the big picture team next 3 years aspect have to do with it, or is it just purely what is best for his health? I do wonder if there's even a sliver of that goes into consideration, with the decision making process. So anyway, it's something to ponder.
One thing, and this is something that popped in my head. I think you and I talked about this a bit yesterday, actually, when the news broke, or maybe it was Monday when the news broke. This week's kind of blending together. It's been a crazy week. But the fact that Bob Murray is kind of an old school guy, and I could very much see him not liking. It's not exactly cap circumvention, but it's essentially having a guy on your payroll and just planning on putting him on LTIR. So he's essentially retired, but he's not exactly retired. I mean, you've seen it with guys like Chris Pronger. You've seen it with guys like Marian Hossa. You've seen it with all of these guys. And it's not exactly cap circumvention, but it's keeping a guy to have that long-term injury reserve salary relief so that he's getting paid, if that makes sense. And I feel like Bob Murray, being the old school type of guy, he's probably not exactly a fan of kind of going around or skirting with the rules or different things like that. And I think that he might view it as, if he's not leaving the door open in a way, it's him doing that.
Right. So it'll be interesting. I don't know. I feel like there's just not really a whole lot more that we can say without just going into deep speculationville, which we are not strangers to, by the way.
Seeing as I just did that.
But, I think that's kind of the extent of it. So we talked about the camp ramifications a little bit, but to me now what's probably the most interesting, just from a hockey perspective, is obviously the roster ramifications. Because as of right now, the Ducks have an interesting group of centers. I mean, obviously Ryan Getzlaf is going to be back for the first of 3 remaining seasons. And then you've got Adam Henrique. And after that, as potential centers, Carter Rowney, Devin Shore played some center. So those are your potential guys for, your remaining spots. And then I guess Derek Grant, if they bring him back. But it gets really thin to me after Henrique. Now, I guess I should ask you this, since this is the drum you've been beating all year. Do you feel like the possibility of Adam Henrique getting traded just went down quite a bit?
Because of Kesler?
Because of Kesler basically just not being back at all, in the foreseeable future.
Because my idea about Henrique getting moved in the first place was still under the impression that Kesler wasn't going to be on the team.
Well, so then to that point, if Henrique isn't back at all, let's say that they do trade him, that leaves you with Ryan Getzlaf as your first-line center.
Yep, I have it up on the screen.
And then after that, you have Carter Rowney. Sam Steele is obviously going to be there. Maybe Devin Shore, but that's all due respect to Sam Steele, Carter Rowney, and Devin Shore, but that's not really a group of centers that I'm excited about if this team wants to be competitive next year.
So
we all know how important being deep down the middle is. Or strong down the middle is.
You still have Isaac Lundestrom, and there is the potential of there is the potential. We shouldn't put this rule this out completely, even though most likely it won't happen. But the guy that they take now with the number 9 pick, if he ends up impressing at camp, he may make the roster.
Yes, but I don't know.
So I think that.
But so then let's take that at face value. So you have Ryan Getzlaff, 9th overall pick, Sam Steele, and Isaac Lundestrom, or Carter Rowney. I don't know. I mean, I don't hate it, but that's not, we're going for it. That's not, we're
well, they're not going to
this is a seat we're pushing for the playoffs.
They're not going to be going for it next year. I think they're hoping that they can make a push for the playoffs, but I don't think Bob Murray is under any impression that this is going to be a cup contending team. Next season's going to be more.
Well, if we can agree on that, then I feel like that makes this conversation all easier to have, because we still don't totally know what this team is shooting for next year. I feel like they're still clearly in a retool. He's talked about it.
Yep.
But, you have guys like CJ tweeting out Erik Karlsson Ducks jersey screenshots.
Not? Why not?
I mean, I don't think it makes any sense if you're in a retool to bring on Erik Karlsson.
12 million cap space. Why not?
Also, I'm going to say it. I would not sign Erik Karlsson's next contract unless I am the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are on the verge of winning the cup.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, have you seen how he looks these playoffs? I mean, he has a ton of points, Erik Karlsson does.
Yeah.
But he's got some stretches of game where it's just hard to watch. And again, he's still probably the best defenseman in the NHL, but he's 29. He's had major injuries. I don't know. I mean, this is supposed to be the classic bad contract, and yet we're all, and maybe rightfully so, kind of overlooking that because it's Erik Karlsson. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like giving him 8 years at that whatever maximum he's going to get, it feels like that would give me some pause if I was a GM. I don't think I would want to write that check again, unless I was a team that was, let's say, a Rangers who just wants to get some excitement back, or a team like maybe Tampa Bay, if you can swing it, who is just that close. Or maybe you're just the Sharks and you're just like, yeah, we want to bring him back. We want to bring this thing back.
Here's an idea. A player that is known as being a play driver. We've talked about it a bit here and there, and this is a complete crackpot theory. No actual evidence of this potentially happening.
So par for the course.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we're a podcast. It's summer. We got to talk about something. If the Ducks are really in a mode of kind of really completely reshaping the roster, and they move out a guy like Henrique, they maybe move out a guy like Nick Ritchie, or Daniel Sprong, open up some spots. What if the Ducks take a shot at getting Artemi Panarin?
I mean, I would be more in favor of that, but he is also, I believe, 29.
Is he?
So, yeah.
Why? I think he was 25.
Oh, no. He was 25 when he entered the league.
God.
Yeah. He's 27. Sorry, he's 27.
Okay.
But that's still, I could very easily see him being great until age 31. I have no issue seeing that, but I don't know if I just don't know with these Ducks if that's the move. I also don't know if he would necessarily go to Anaheim.
Well, that's my point, is that it's kind of crackpot theory in terms of trying to figure out if he would come.
He's Florida, New York, or Chicago bound. Those are my predictions.
Let's take a look really quick at the various...
Or LA. For whatever reason, LA is more viable than Anaheim. So
unrestricted free agents out there. Maybe Matt Duchene?
Again, I just
still 28 years old.
I don't see Bob Murray being interested in Matt Duchene for some reason.
Yeah.
He doesn't strike me as a Bob Murray player. But I think that... So my theory on the Ducks center situation, to kind of put a bow on this topic, is I think that the Ducks, if they do bring in help down the middle, it's going to be a guy, kind of, lower end guy who can just kind of fill out maybe that third or fourth slot, who can just give them some depth. I don't see them spending a ton of money just to bring in a name, like people have talked about, they should bring Jason Spezza. And I know Jason Spezza is still good, or at least was good in the playoffs, but I don't know if at the age he's at, the production he had last season, if that totally makes sense. And then after that, I mean, your options already start getting thin. So I don't know. I mean, one guy that I think could be interesting, Marcus Kruger. Is anyone still excited about Marcus Kruger?
No.
I feel like he could be a good. I mean, that's kind of his role. Is he's a good depth center. But to me, that's the kind of guy I see them targeting if they're going to target anyone at all down the middle. Just because. And by the way, I feel like a Henrique trade got less likely with this news.
Disagree, but
or this news confirms that a Henrique trade feels unlikely. But flipping now to potential trades, since we're just kind of going off the rails here. I promise we will get to the San Diego Gulls recap. Believe me, it deserves some time here. But I want to spend a little time talking about the Ducks since we haven't really had a chance to do that as much recently. The area where clearly there is some logjam, and Jake, if you want to bring back up your roster chart here for our viewers, the wings are pretty logjammed for the Ducks going into next season. If you look at some of the guys, I feel like a trade for someone that's just maybe the odd man out, along their traded. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, it could definitely happen. I mean, running through the names right now of the guys who are currently signed on the wings, you've got Devin Shore, who can play center, but Nick Ritchie, Ricard Raquel, Troy Terry, Max Jones, Corey Perry, Jakob Silverberg, Andre Kasha, Daniel Sprong, and then you also have Maxime Comtois, who's set to make the team, and you have Kiefer Sherwood also. So there's a fair amount of guys that are going to be vying.
A lot of wingers, and there's a lot of guys who can play. Wait, go back up to the wingers. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the guys they have now, I mean, let's just start with the left side. So Shore, Ritchie, Raquel, Terry.
Terry's a right wing.
Jones.
This was just me throwing guys there for cap
purposes.
Right.
Well, so let's say you put in Jones there, and you bring up a Max Comtois. There has to be an odd man out there.
Yeah.
And then on the right, Eves, you can assume isn't going to be part of the team, at least early on. Daniel Sprong, he was kind of a in and out type of guy by the end of last season. Kasha, Silverberg, Perry for your top three right wingers is basically set in stone, and then you put in Troy Terry into there. So, I mean, there is a distinct possibility where on some nights one of maybe Ritchie or Sprong, at least one of Ritchie or Sprong, isn't in the lineup, which just feels kind of wild, because as much as Daniel Sprong has had his share of criticism, it feels like he's a guy who should at least just be in your depth lineup. Not necessarily a guy that you're counting on every night, but a guy that, hey, if he's playing reasonably well from a two-way perspective and can get one every few games, I feel like he's an everyday player. And then Nick Ritchie, same deal. So I don't know. Do you see? I mean, personally, I'll just put it out there. I would live with this conundrum and kind of see who rises to the top, because Sprong and Ritchie are on really good deals for the Ducks for the value they do provide.
Yeah, I don't think you trade any of them unless you have a...
And they also don't have a ton of value. I don't see the Ducks being able to get a whole lot for either of these players.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of move them if you have a direct replacement identified, whether that is you expect one of these kids to make that jump. But that is still a bit of an unknown right there in terms of being able to make that jump and guaranteed to make that jump. In terms of a clear replacement identified, just this is kind of tracing back to what we were talking about before. But if the Ducks, for whatever reason, were able to go out and sign an Artemi Panarin, that is a direct person to take a spot. Maybe you move two of these guys now to open up spaces. Not saying that they're going to do that, but I'm saying that's an example.
I love how we're just back to that.
Hey,
we're just back to our Panarin possibility. Oh, maybe. Great.
Might as well.
You gotta rally the base.
The real interesting thing is the back end, because the back end right now it's
is it that interesting, Jake? Looking at this blue line, are you that interested by it?
By interesting, I mean that there are question marks, and that is where I think things will be addressed, and that is where the idea of the Adam Henrique trade has come into play.
I mean, you're clearly sacrificing a year of center depth to bolster your blue line.
Yep.
I think that's clear. PK Subban just turned 30, by the way.
So Jacob Trouba is what you're saying.
Ooh, I feel like he's gone from Winnipeg, but I don't know if it's to Anaheim.
Henrique for Trouba?
Well, let's kind of run down the blue line while we're at it. So Fowler, Manson, Lindholm, Manson, your clear-cut top pairing.
Yeah.
Then you have Fowler, Gooley, or I guess Gooley, Fowler. Gooley playing on his natural left, and Fowler, who was on his off wing at the end of last season. And then that leaves your third pairing kind of in a weird spot. You have Josh Mahura, who has shown flashes, injured currently, and then Jacob Larson. I feel like we can kind of assume that Jacob Larson will be on the third pairing to start the season.
And then we also we have Yanni Hankenpaa.
Cocoa Puffs.
Is that his new nickname? Did you just come up with that on the spot?
I'm sorry if that was offensive. I know we have listeners in Finland, so I should take that back. I recant that.
They're coming after you. They're flying here to get you.
I want to completely take that back.
They're coming for you.
So Hakanpää is a righty, and so you could have a Hakanpää Larson third pairing. Look, I'm just pronouncing it like I think it's pronounced. I see you laughing over there, Jake, and I'm sorry, but I have to say the guy's name. I can't just call him Player X. I can't really do that. Or what did
defenseman?
What did Brian Burke call? Was it Eric? Who did he call Eric? Was it Eric Carlson? No, Rafael Diaz in a playoff series. He called him like player 64 or something like that. Anyway, didn't know his actual name. But anyway, so I don't see a whole lot of movement on the Ducks blue line unless it comes in the way of an upgrade.
Yeah.
If they make a trade. For trading maybe a center like Adam Henrique to push it. But then who are you pushing out? That's the other thing. I mean, at that point, you're sending poor Hakanpää, who just took a long flight from Finland to Orange County. I mean, hey, I'm just saying, like.
I mean, he came to find you to tell you how to pronounce his name properly.
To me, Gooley is a lock.
Yes.
To make that.
Yes.
And I don't even know if he's a lock in the mind of the organization, but I can guarantee he's going to play his way into it. And then from there, obviously, Lindholm, Manson, Fowler rounds out that top four. So really, to see a major change, are one of the household blue line names moved out as well? Is a Fowler moved?
That's the big question. I mean,
I feel like the Fowler contract is worse than the Henry contract.
I think he brings more value, but that's just my personal opinion on that. But I think that
he's definitely a body who can skate.
I think what we need to look at is, I remember there was a quote after the trade deadline that Bob Murray had that, or maybe was right after just the Brandon Montour trade, but it was something along the lines of, if you looked at the board right now, you might be confused. You might not understand where all the puzzle pieces fit, what's going on, but we do have a plan. And you're going to need it. More things will get addressed in the summer. We have things identified more or less with what we want to do. And so I think that there are going to be more things to come. And I think this blue line is where we're going to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it just feels a little cobbled together right now. Even though I like elements of it, I think that the blue line may continue to get younger. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
All right.
I did want to make mention, because Bonnie brought up saying that I should move up Walensky on this roster. Walensky, Magna, Kesler, all these guys are actually UFAs, Group 6 UFAs, which means a Group 6 UFA is basically if you didn't get enough NHL time within the first however many years, instead of becoming an RFA, I believe the second time around, with arbitration rights, you go straight to becoming a UFA because you did not get that chance in the NHL level. So the NHL is setting up where you can go wherever you want to get a chance to make the NHL.
And look, Walensky and Magna, basically most of the Gulls players have played well in this Calder Cup run. And, making it to the conference final just gives them even more exposure. So it is possible that some of them sign deals with other clubs where they maybe have a more realistic shot at an NHL job. I feel like that's a possibility. Definitely with probably, I could almost see Magna being more likely to stay, just because I feel like Walensky still maybe has a little upside as an NHL guy, because he does have that offensive element to his game. Magna is the captain of the Gulls, and I don't know how much that's really worth if you can make more money, substantially more money. But we'll see. I think that this Calder Cup run is going to make some guys potentially wealthier. So why not just jump into it here? The Gulls advancing after defeating a very good Bakersfield Condors team in a series where the final score was 4-2, but the actual number of games played within it definitely exceeded that.
Oh,
You had
yeah.
one game go to quadruple overtime.
You had
So
another single overtime game, a double overtime game.
yeah. So that was definitely an exciting one. We got to do a breakdown of the series last week, or a game recap. We're not going to do a game recap tonight, but it's just some thoughts on the Gulls playoff run so
Well,
far.
I mean, so kind of the two games that have happened since that, not doing a full recap, but just mentioning them, the Gulls lost in Bakersfield in a double overtime game, and then they won Game 6 at home to clinch the series. I believe the final score was 6-2, if I'm looking at this right. Let me just confirm. Yeah, 6-2. I think that this was a really good showing and really good outing for the Gulls, and really, I mean, this Bakersfield Condors team was the best team in the AHL. They were very, very good. They like I said,
and they loaded up. I mean, they added Evan Bouchard for the playoff run, coming up from junior, and he actually had a goal and an assist in that final clinching game for Bakersfield. And so, yeah, that was a good Bakersfield team that they just beat.
Yeah, it was a really, really good Bakersfield team. And you had guys like Chase DeLeo coming up big in this game, scoring his first goal of the series to be able to get on the scoreboard. And I think kind of the biggest thing for the Gulls is that Max Comtois joined the team. And I think he made himself a difference maker in this series.
And all he does is produce. I mean, he has 6 points in 6 games in the postseason so far for the Gulls, 3 goals and 3 assists. He has been very good. I mean, he's not, again, it's interesting because he's never going to be a guy who necessarily is like a buzzsaw out there, like an Andre Kasha, for example. But he's just one of those guys who just seems to be able to find those areas. Already has 17 shots on goal in 6 games for the Gulls. So he's shooting the puck a ton, which is a good sign for him because I do believe in his shot. And I don't know. I just feel like I have a very hard time imagining him not making the NHL next year.
I agree.
I feel like if it weren't for cap technicalities this year, he would probably have remained in pro hockey. Maybe not with the Ducks, but he seems NHL ready. Again, I'm not saying that he's going to be an all-star or whatever the case may be, but I think that just based on what we've seen, it's very hard to justify leaving him down at that level for very long. If he does start the season next year in San Diego, I can't imagine it being a very, very long stretch. It'll probably be like the Terry stretch, kind of.
Yeah. I think that he's definitely a guy that's got to be kind of on the radar of the Ducks for next season. I mean, he's a guy that you had Bob Murray making specific statements about him wanting the NHL to take a look at their rule to change for him because he thought he should be playing in the AHL this year. And
right.
So the fact that those are statements being made about him, that shows you kind of the regard that the team puts him in for kind of their hierarchy. And so I think they have him up there with the first rounders, with the guys. I mean, granted, Troy Terry also not a first rounder, but I think he's in that conversation also. I think you have those 4 of Jones, Steele, Comtois, Terry as guys that are kind of pegged as being difference makers long term and being on the team and making an impact next year.
Yeah, and I believe Max Jones still out. I don't think he played in Game 6.
Correct.
And so that's a tough blow for the Gulls. I don't think we actually know the specific injury yet that he suffered. It's just listed as a lower body injury, I believe, which is tough to say because some people, I think we were even speculating that he may have gotten concussed. I believe it was for Game 4 or Game 5. So we'll see. Now, what is the possibility that Troy Terry gets a cameo in this Calder Cup run for the Gulls?
Yeah, Bonnie mentions they have not announced what the injury was, so it's all pure speculation.
It's lower body, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? I think 3 weeks was what they said a couple weeks ago. So I think maybe if this series goes long, maybe he has a chance of getting into a game. But I think it's more likely
if he's absolutely ready. I mean, I don't think the Ducks organizationally should be pushing him to get back.
Yeah.
I mean, as great as it would be for the Gulls, you don't want to rush a guy back from a broken leg to participate in AHL playoffs. As great of an experience it would be. That's my stance personally.
And I think looking at kind of the point totals from this, kind of a big player in the playoffs for the Gulls so far has been Sam Steele in terms of kind of looking at this from a purely Ducks perspective of guys that will be on the team. I mean, you have guys like Adam Cracknell, Sam Carrick having really good playoff runs, putting up 12 points each, being very, very pivotal. Adam Cracknell playing with Maxime Comtois for a fair amount of the round. I think they switched things up in the last game, but Cracknell's done a really good job with 6 goals. But I don't foresee Cracknell or Carrick really have an impact on the Ducks long term. So when you look at a guy like Sam Steele putting up 10 points in 10 games, especially for having, I would say, probably a bit of a rough time during the regular season with the Gulls. He wasn't exactly he didn't exactly light it up for the Gulls during the regular season. I'm trying to check right now actually what his point totals were.
Yeah, he had 41 points in 53 games in the regular season, which is still decent, but it's not he got a little overshadowed by Troy Terry, who was a point per game player.
Yeah, and so you have him putting up a point per game in the playoffs, and so it's kind of his game rising to another level, that whole playoff performer thing that you like to see from different guys, but I think it's also him settling in, and when you're going up against tougher opponents and kind of getting tougher matchups, he's finding a way to thrive, and that's really important.
And just to give you an idea of the difference in style between Sam Steele and Max Comtois, 17 shots in 6 games for Comtois, like I mentioned, 15 shots in 10 games for Steele.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. There's the analytics. There's the fancy stats you all deserve.
I have a feeling Max Comtois could become a favorite of mine in terms of looking at individual numbers.
Well, because he's a volume guy.
Yeah.
Max Jones was like this at the end of last season as well. He's a guy who shoots a lot, and generally speaking, those guys are going to find a way to be productive, or at least to drive play in the right direction. So I don't know. I didn't really know what to think of Comtois in the initial phases of last season where he made the team out of camp, but I have been steadily encouraged by his play, and I hope that it continues. Okay. Any other closing thoughts on the Gulls' run so far? Any other observations or?
Nope. They're going to be playing the Chicago Wolves, and the first game is going to be actually this upcoming Friday already. Friday, May 17th is game 1 at 5 p.m. Game 2 is then on Saturday right away. So both games are at 5, Friday, Saturday of this week. Then next week down in San Diego on Wednesday is game 3. Game 4 will be Friday, May 24th. If there's a game 5, it will be next Saturday, May 25th, all in San Diego. Then the series bumps back to Chicago, so it is a 2-3-2 series, which logically makes sense when you have a team in San Diego and Chicago playing each other, and travel becomes a concern in the AHL. So you only have to travel twice, pretty much. Right.
I may make it down to San Diego next week.
Same.
That Friday night action is pretty tantalizing.
Do we need to plan an Anaheim calling San Diego Gulls playoff game?
We just might. Stay posted on that one.
Stay tuned.
Another thing I did want to mention is that the games that I've watched, Isaac Lundestrom has looked pretty good.
He has.
He, I believe, has 3 points in 4 games since arriving to San Diego for the postseason. So looks good. That's positive for the Ducks, a guy who was obviously their first round pick last draft. So the better he can be, to me, takes the better he is, the more the draft pick that the Ducks will have this summer, 9th overall, little less pressure on that player, just because if you can have a guy in Lundestrom who was a very late round pick to be very good, and then you, let's say, just get the average expected value of a 9th overall pick, that's a really good situation for the Ducks to be in, because you're basically, I mean, of course, you could say that about any team, any picks, but I think specifically for Lundestrom and these Ducks who are experiencing a bit of a changing of the guard down the middle.
Yep.
All right. Now, before we transition over to questions, this is the part where I'm supposed to insert that we. All right. So for those who are listening on the recorded version, we're going to have an ad break right now.
Yep.
Okay. We are back.
Yep.
Now, for everyone who's in the Twitch chat, go ahead and submit questions if you haven't already. We've already, I think we're closing in on the hour mark here, just 3 minutes away from that. So we're probably not going to do a ton of questions, but if you have anything, definitely throw it at us.
Yep. And so for those of you, though, I mean, here's the spiel again. For those of you listening to the recorded version of this or watching the recorded version of this on YouTube, we do a Twitch stream each and every time where you can interact with us live, have chats with other people in our Twitch chat, watching live, talking about different things we say, making us feel bad about things we say, making us laugh, making us happy, really kind of affecting how we do it. And there's a way for you to support us also live on the Twitch chat. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button after each and every month. We have people like Bonnie who has been supporting us, I believe it said 8 months now. So thank you, Bonnie, for that.
Shout out.
And so basically since we began, so kind of when the chat ends up becoming very, very crowded and lots of questions come flowing through, mainly during the season, we will do our best to prioritize questions from Twitch Prime members. And you get special badges next to your name, special emotes to throw into the chat, and there will be new emotes next season. Don't you worry, we won't have to have Jack Hughes sitting there, even though that's never going to happen. The first question, this actually came from Twitter, but it was kind of said in the Twitch chat also by Lewis. It came from our good buddy Chad Lawrence, who said, who do you think is the better defenseman? This is not Ducks related. Brent Burns or Erik Karlsson?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I would say off the cuff, without even looking at the numbers, I think I would still rather have Erik Karlsson on my team just overall. Although I do like Brent Burns a lot, I feel like the things that I want to count on in a pivotal defenseman and a guy I'm going to pay a lot of money, I feel like I just get more of those things from Erik Karlsson, that ability to move the puck, just those kind of crazy plays that he can make to spring a guy open. You just see him try passes. He's almost like, to put it into context, across sports, he's almost like a Patrick Mahomes type in football who just tries passes at his position that no one else does. And I kind of feel like that's Erik Karlsson at his position. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, he has being that good, he does have warts in his, people are going to fixate a little bit on the warts in his game, but I still would rather live with that. I feel like it's easier to build a team around Karlsson than is Burns. Burns is a great player in his own right, but you kind of need to, it's not as much of a plug in and play building a team around him. You kind of need the right pieces because he's, not the strongest defensively, shoots the puck a ton, and those things are obviously the shooting is extremely valuable, but I feel like Karlsson is a guy who can just be good with any roster. I mean, look no further than the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
My answer would be Karlsson.
Yep. All right. Ken Pafu, our resident Silverberg lover, said, question, who is the best rookie to play with?
Oh, I thought that was you, Jake.
Yeah, I do.
I thought that was you. Jake is just rolling his eyes.
I don't hate Silverberg. I remember I turned into a defender of him come the end of the season. No one wanted him
traded more than you.
Yeah, and then I ended up somehow in a very weird way defending him.
You're gonna have to wear that. I'm sorry. Until next season starts.
Until next season starts. Wow. Do I just have to wear all of my mistakes?
No, I'm basically all the little bits and jokes from last year, outside of the major ones, expire to me when the new season starts.
Weren't you the one that kept bringing up the Lanch this year when that was last season's bit?
Well, I didn't realize that you just kind of give up on teams year to year. I didn't know about that.
You jump the boat each year. It's based upon how they're doing. Who knows if I'm going to like the Hurricanes next year?
You jump the boat every year.
Who knows how the Hurricanes will do? But once I'm loyal to a team, I'm loyal.
I'm just glad. I'm actually impressed, and I guess I'm the one that's going to say it, which defeats the purpose. But I'm impressed that we've made it over an hour now, without Jake mentioning anything about Tottenham, about soccer. That's actually very impressive. I'm proud of you,
on
Jake.
Their way to Madrid.
I could really use more of this. I think this is a really good starting point for you.
Are we doing a pod on June 1st? Can we do a pod on June 1st?
What's June 1st besides June 1st?
It's just this little tiny thing going on in Madrid that's called the Champions League final. That Tottenham are in.
No need for that.
So rude. All right.
No need.
So Tony, our resident Jakob Silverberg fan, said, who is the best rookie that's going to be playing with Jakob Silverberg? And he was like, just kidding. If the Ducks can get Kirby Doc, do you think they should can't get Doc? Sorry. Do you think they should get Cousins, projected 9th, or take their chances with Cole Caulfield after his offensive boom in the Worlds? So have you been monitoring kind of the big bump that Cole Caulfield has had in the World? I think it was the under-18 Worlds.
I do. I have been reading up on Cole Caulfield lately, and I feel like the kind of skill set that he provides is exactly what the Ducks need. There's a lot of great players, or a lot of very good players, I should say, in this top 10, but I think that you want the guys who have the highest, or at least the most observed possibility of being an impact player who can just make a play from anywhere on the ice. I feel like even a guy like Cousins, or even Doc, I feel like they kind of fit more of that traditional mold, whereas Caulfield seems like he has just, I don't know, just something a little extra about the shiftiness, the playmaking. And I feel like the Ducks really need more of that in spades, because if you look at the guys that they're going to be surrounding him with, let's say that they do draft him, Comtois, Jones, even a Terry, these are good players, but they're the kind of guys who are predictable, who are shooters. And if you can put a dynamic playmaker between them, then things get really interesting. That you kind of have that steadiness on the wings, and you get your burst from the middle. So again, I haven't done too much research yet, but I would have no issue with them taking Caulfield number 9.
Yeah, I think my only concern with that is he's a guy that's really had a big
He's smaller.
Boost. Well, no, it's not that. I actually would really like that fact. But basically kind of what I was thinking was that he's a guy that's really gotten a big bump of late simply due to his play in the under 18 Worlds. And I'm very cautious of kind of buying into the stock of a player from a short tournament.
Well, it's not totally just, I mean, it's not this meteoric rise. It's not he came out of nowhere.
No, but the fact that he wasn't really seen as a top 10 prospect until his performance there. And it's the same thing as why I don't exactly like buying into players that are success or have really successful world junior tournaments, because at the end of the day, it's a small sample. And so,
well, let me ask you if you can buy into this.
Okay.
Let me ask you if you can buy into this. So for the U18 team this season, he had 100 points in 64 games. Caulfield did.
Fair.
And he had 41 points in 28 games for the junior team in the USHL.
Fair. I honestly haven't looked into him that much. If you can
buy into that, then and he did play very well at the under 18s, but he's committed to the University of Wisconsin, so there's actually a very strong possibility he wouldn't be in the NHL next season.
Daniel Kleinberg would love that, staff writer on the site, University of Wisconsin alum.
He kind of, like, I know this isn't a perfect comparison, but he kind of reminds me of the DeBrincat situation, where a guy who's just massively productive, but just for whatever reason it didn't count. Yeah. That where I guess it's DeBrincat now. DeBrincat. Sorry.
However you want to say it.
DeBrincat.
The interesting thing is, I honestly, with the playoffs going on and everything going on with the Gulls, I haven't really exactly had a chance to dive into how a lot of the prospects have been doing, and really take a look at kind of who's been moving, different things like that. I think once we kind of get near the end of the playoffs and start moving into the draft, I'll start to look into that. But I think the most shocking thing that's kind of happened after looking at things in the last little bit is how much Cousins has fallen. He was the de facto number 3 overall pick. On most people's draft board around the time of the draft lottery and the lead up to the draft lottery, and the fact that now he's fallen where he potentially can end up 9th is kind of shocking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's something to monitor, but that's kind of the nature of the game this time of year. I feel like things tend to get a little more normal as we get closer and closer to the draft. There's just this period of time where things get a little crazy because we have nothing else to talk about. All right. Any other questions? Anything else you want to get into here?
Andrew Zuni brought up, is Brandon Gooley going to be in the next round? I believe I saw Bonnie in our Twitch chat mention the fact that he will be. I don't know if I've actually seen anything. Have you seen anything on Brandon Gooley?
I have not, actually. Yeah. So,
yep.
Stay tuned.
Bonnie brought up, who is going to be the leader of the new team in name and in spirit? Is Getzlaf losing his leadership edge? No. And Bonnie brought up, even Eric Stevens actually brought this up.
No, I think that how that's being expressed is more Getzlaf is still the leader of this team, but he's the leader of a new wave. He's basically ushering in a new wave, but there has to be a leader out of that group that arises. And so I feel like right now the Ducks do have a group of players who are all on equal footing, you could say. You know, the Steels, Comtois, Terry's, those guys. And I think a leader has to arise out of that pack.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to, but that's kind of how these things go. But Getzlaf is still the elder statesman. He's still the guy who's going to see that through. But there kind of has to be a number 2 or number 3, I guess, if you still count Perry in that role.
Yep, and I think Getzlaf, I don't know. It's really hard to talk about something like leadership because it's not as if we're the ones in the locker room.
We know nothing.
Yeah, like this is a part where we legitimately know nothing about how he works as a leader, what he does, different things like that. And at the end of the day, it's pure speculation. But I mean, he's been the captain of this team for, I think it's coming up on 10 years. He's one of the longest tenured captains. I believe he is the longest tenured captain in Ducks history. I still think he has a couple years left. And I think you're right that someone else kind of does need to start stepping up from that kind of second wave and maybe even the third wave of players. You have the second wave in terms of the Lindholm, the Fowler, that different group. And I think we've seen
I guess that would technically still be the second wave.
Well, no, that is the second wave in Lindholm and Fowler and them. And then the third wave is the Jones, the Terrys, that type of group. And so eventually someone from that group needs to then start stepping up. And it's almost
the second wave is getting outnumbered. So
yeah, they are. It's whether that's a guy like Fowler, different thing like that. Because, I mean, let's be real. Getzlaf, like I said,
I think we know the answer on that one.
Cam Fowler?
I think we know the answer on that one.
Troy Terry?
Anyway.
Troy Terry leader?
I'm done here.
Where are you going? I'm so confused.
Okay. Anyway.
I'm so confused.
Well, you were saying, will a Cam Fowler step up? And I said, I think we know the answer to that question. But.
Oh, what a jerk. Wow.
Hey, I'm on brand.
Wow.
I'm on brand.
Wow. All right. We had a question from Varluna said, is this possibly the end of Nick Ritchie's tenure in a Ducks uniform?
No. I don't think it makes sense to trade him off of, I guess, what you could consider a down season, where he still is on an affordable contract. What are they going to get for him? Like a 3rd-round pick? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to trade him at this point.
Yep.
You don't sell a guy at his absolute lowest value.
And
that's not how these things go.
It's funny. I saw someone, I can't really remember who, I don't exactly want to put anyone on blast or anything like that. I can't remember who it was on Twitter, but kind of saying that Nick Ritchie's overrated. I think he's way underrated at this point.
He is properly rated.
I don't know if he's properly rated, though.
He does a lot of stuff that is kind of dumb.
Yes, agreed.
AKA the penalties. But he also does a lot of stuff that's good.
Yes.
But that good stuff is not necessarily game breaking.
True.
He is who he is. He's Nick Ritchie.
Fair.
He is okay. Nick Ritchie is still okay.
There's your hashtag. I have
Dusting it off, just like John Hollers.
I have my Perry is very good, and or Perry is still good, and my Terry is very good. You've got your Nick Ritchie is okay.
Nick Ritchie is okay. That'll be my contribution to this podcast 10 years from now. That'll be what I remember for.
Tony at Kempafu chimes in on our question about leadership and the waves. And I think this is a good shout. He says, I think not just my fandom, that now that Kesler's out, Silverberg gets an A. Bob Murray has expressed how much he likes the hard work that Silverberg put in. I think that's a good shout because he was very complimentary of Jakob Silverberg and the fact of signing him and wanting him there. Different things like that. I could see Jakob Silverberg getting an A and really being a big part of the leadership core moving forward.
Oh, I think he will absolutely get an A. I mean, you think back to the way Bob Murray was talking about him at the end of last season, and it feels all but a distinct possibility that he's going to get it. So I think that's a good place to end, though, if we're getting into potential captains for next year.
Oh,
any last topic you want to get into here?
We never mentioned the biggest news of the week. Lane Lambert's getting an interview with the Ducks. Who is Lane Lambert?
There are other coaches that are being interviewed besides Dallas Eakins. This was big news for Jake. This was a really big moment for him, that someone else besides Dallas Eakins exists and has a chance to be the Ducks' next coach.
Dallas isn't the Ducks head coach already? Just
Yeah,
announce
but there's a lot of good chatter about Lane Lambert.
Yeah, agreed.
He seems qualified, but I'm not gonna go crazy over this news.
So I mean, for those of you out there,
they're doing their due diligence.
Well,
That's what they should be doing.
We should break down a little bit of Lane Lambert from what we've read and what we've seen. I think
I just made a behind the back shot, by the way, little crumpled ball into my.
This is what you get from the live experience. People.
You'll see it if you're on the live stream
or
YouTube. Can't wait to
YouTube.
see the replay because I'm on a little delay right now.
Felix is waiting.
Oh, that went in? Wow, you can't actually see it go in, but you can see the toss.
Damn.
The difficult nature of the toss.
All right,
Steph Curry-like, I should say.
So Lane Lambert, so he's the New York Islanders associate coach, I believe is the way it's worded right now. He's been with Barry Trotz since he was in Nashville. He was also an AHL coach for Nashville before he was called up to be an assistant coach. It seems it seems as if he's a guy that's being compared. You saw in the Twitch chat, Ken Pafu just said that he hears Mauricio Pochettino is getting an interview with the Ducks. For those of you out there, that's Tottenham's manager, and he's magic, you know.
And all of two people cared right now.
So sorry, back to Lane Lambert. He's being compared a lot to Rod Brindamore, a guy that's kind of a player's coach, a guy that wants that effort, that hardworking kind of element from the players, but he is on their side. It's really hard though to talk about him, seeing as he's only been an associate head coach. We don't really have any information on how his teams have done underneath him. All we have, and this is similar to kind of not exactly the criticism, but what we have for in terms of people vying for Dallas Eakins. It's all people that have played for him and that enjoyed playing for him, and so they're all just kind of talking about almost these intangible type of things that can't exactly be quantified in terms of the things he does. With Dallas Eakins, it's Troy Terry saying, sitting down with me and kind of going through things. It's people saying that he really takes the time to understand what makes each player tick. And that's great, and that's great to see and hear from a coach, but we don't exactly know how that quantifies into an on-ice product, and that's the same issue I think we have with Lane Lambert. But I think my biggest takeaway from him getting an interview is that at least I think the Ducks are trending in the right direction with the people they're looking at, which is looking at kind of a guy that's more of the new wave type of coach, looking at trying to kind of modernize things, bring it into the future a bit, as compared to taking a step back and looking at a guy like, and I know he's been hired already, but as you mentioned to me last show and I had forgot about it until it was brought up on Monday again, Mike Yeo. You also have guys like Bob Hartley, who's kind of, I guess, facing some tough stuff in the KHL. But those would be more retreads, kind of old school type of guys. And that's not exactly who we're hearing the Ducks are looking at hiring. And I think that's a good sign.
It's positive. Yeah, definitely positive. And it's just something that we will have to continue monitoring. This coaching search seems oddly synchronized with the Gulls Calder Cup run. That's all I will say about that.
Dallas Eakins, the doctor.
Yes.
The doctor will be our head coach. Get ready for all the gifts. Get ready for all the gifts.
All right. I feel like that's a clear sign. We should get on out of here. All right. Are we doing the thing? Are we wrapping up?
We're wrapping up. Go ahead and wrap this thing up. Try to land this thing.
All right, guys. So thanks a lot for listening today to our very first. It's not our first podcast, but it's our first podcast in this new era on the SB Nation Podcast Network. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're excited to bring you more content, more quality, bring you new things that we haven't really been able to do in the past. So it's going to be a good off season as kind of like a tune-up, and then by the time we hit the regular season, it's just going to be crazy.
Yep.
So
and if you found the audio,
stay tuned.
And if you found the audio version of this, or you found where the podcast is at. If you're watching the recorded version of this video and you do listen to the audio version, it will still be available in all your typical audio formats. It will be available on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, on kind of anywhere your podcast can be found. It will now be on Spotify also. The only kind of thing that will happen that will impact you as a listener is this show will not be available on SoundCloud anymore. That will not be where this podcast is hosted anymore. So sadly, the episodes will not get in there anymore. So yeah, that's kind of the biggest piece of impact, but we still will have all of our Twitch streams going, so you'll still have that. We'll still have the show on YouTube, and we'll still have it on Patreon.
Absolutely. And for those Patreon subscribers, we will have The first May episode coming out soon. Probably tomorrow is when we'll be recording it. I'm not too sure yet, but it'll be soon. That's patreon.com/acpod. Make sure to check us out on the Apple Podcast app, and you will notice that there's been a change there. So we will still be out of the same, or there's a new page now on Apple Podcasts.
It's the same. It's the same exact feed though. If you have been subscribed to the show, you will still be subscribed to the show. Nothing will change. If you have reviewed the show, your review will still be there. It's all the same stuff. Just a couple different housekeeping items have changed there, but it's not really going to affect anything there. But I think I do want to mention that if you have not left a review, now that we've switched platforms, the reviews will become even more helpful and do even better for us in terms of SB Nation to move up kind of the ladder there. So the more that you reviews that, especially 5 stars reviews that we can get there, the better.
Absolutely. And I guess finally on that note, if you haven't noticed, I don't know if Jake's actually done this, but right now a lot of our recent pods are no longer there. There's a migration that's going to happen at some point for posterity.
The last 10 are about up.
But if you look at our feed right now, it's not going back a whole lot, and that there's some technical reasons for that, but that will get addressed in due time. So that's going to do it for us tonight, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
I did want to make a quick mention. Sorry
for made it out of here.
For all the housekeeping items at the end. The Twitch stream, it's now twitch.tv/acpod is where you can find the Twitch stream.
That's a good one.
Same, you don't need to resubscribe. You don't need to refollow if you've already done that. It's all the same feed, just new name.
Yeah, that's actually a good call. Twitch.tv/acpod if you are new to the program, if you want to check out the Twitch stream after the game. It's something that's not really going to be as pertinent during the summertime, but definitely once the season hits, you're going to see why people love doing the Twitch stream because of the post-game chat.
One thing, Ken Pafu asked if Kevin Boyle will be ready for the Western Conference Final. He was backing up in the last couple games, so he is ready to go.
Well, if he was ready to be playing, but he will probably be playing at some point in the near future. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight, and we will catch you at the next pod. Talk to you then.
Bye!